Hey everybody, I'm Jason Rockman and welcome to the Rockman Power Hour. This is a very special edition of the Rockman Power Hour. Normally we drop our shows on Monday, but today we decided to drop it on Tuesday. And the reason being is today is International Women's Day. And we wanted to shine the light on some amazing women in rock and roll today. We've managed to put together a stellar episode for you. And we've talked to 5 women from rock bands all around the world. And we've talked to 4 women from some amazing bands all around the world. And I'll tell you, this list is impressive. We've got some up-and-comers, we've got some legends, and we're excited to bring this to you. But before we go any further, let's welcome my co-host, Ryan Stick. How are you, Ryan? What's going on?
I am doing great, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. I like your shirt. Some studio.
I'm rocking the Studio House designs, and it's International Women's Day, and I thought it was very appropriate to rock a shirt such as this for a film such as that.
I could not agree with it more. And they are very comfortable shirts. Thanks to Cody and Aaron from Studio House Designs for outfitting us. They are the comfiest long sleeves around. I mean, I wear these to bed sometimes. I never thought I would wear a long sleeve shirt to bed, but it's that comfortable. And when it's the kind of temperatures we're still having here in Canada, it's nice to have something comfy on.
Yeah, about a few hours ago as we record this, like I thought winter was gone. I'm like, it's going to be spring. It's kind of warm. And then, the world said, nope.
Yeah.
and proceeded to drop a few feet of snow in a span of 5 minutes.
March in Canada, don't ever count us out yet. No, we've got a lot more winter in us, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the Ides of March that Macbeth was referring to was just more shoveling and not so much the king murder.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So today is very important because it is International Women's Day, Ryan. And as you know, I have a lot of strong women in my life. So do you. It's important. I mean, look, I think having days for things are a little ridiculous. Like I think Valentine's Day is a little ridiculous because if you're in a happy relationship, Valentine's Day should be every day. And I don't think we need a single day to celebrate women, but it is important to focus on this day because it is an important day and it does raise a lot of awareness to a lot of people around the world on the importance of women. I mean, listen, I have a very strong mother. I have a very strong wife. I have an incredible young woman who I'm bringing up, who's my daughter. And I love women's energy. I love everything they stand for. And I think a lot of the times women don't get the respect they deserve. So I wanted to take this episode to really shine the light on some incredible women that are working in music today. They're all a little bit different, Ryan. They all come from different backgrounds. They're all a little bit, their musical styles are all a little bit different. And I think that's what's going to make this episode so awesome. So I don't even want to go on and on and on. I just want to get right to these chats because there are some powerful chats. There's some insightful chats, and it's also a chance for people to get to know some of these incredible women. So we're going to start off this episode with a band who I just recently discovered out of the East Coast of Canada. They're called Mares of Thrace, and we are talking today with their guitar player and singer, Trez. Check it out. All right, really, really happy to have with me a musician who I'm just getting to know now, and I've just kind of discovered this band, and I really, really love the sound of this band. I'm talking to Trez from the band Mares of Thrace. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. The sun just came out after a real Halifax snowpocalypse yesterday.
So you're on the East Coast. It's funny. I'm in Montreal and we complain about our winters. And then I remember my friends on the East Coast. And I kind of have to say, yeah, I should shut up now because it's you guys get some brutal winters, don't you?
There's just a lot of like the heavens dump their wrath on us a lot.
I have some friends in California that I speak to regularly on Zoom and stuff, especially in the pandemic. And, they'll be sitting outside having avocado toast from the avocado that just fell off their tree. And I'm outside, like having to put on like a full body shield to take my dog around the block. It's a little frustrating, right?
Oh yeah.
So tell me a bit about this band because you're one of these bands that kind of, to be perfectly honest with you, fell under my radar. But I got turned on to you recently and I was like, where was this hiding? Tell me a bit about the band because this band's kind of had 2 careers in a way. You had a bit of stuff going on and then it was a massive hiatus. And then there's a new chapter to the band. So tell me a bit about the history of this band.
Yeah, we formed in 2009. It was just me and my best friend. And we were like, well, there's just the two of us, but who cares? Nobody can stop us from just making a bunch of gross riffs in our basement.
Right.
And so we did, and it took off in a way that we had never expected. So we put out 2 records. The first one we did independently, and the second we did on Sonic Onion. And it exceeded our expectations. We did a bunch of touring. We toured North America a bunch. And then we got to a point in life where I think a lot of musicians do, where it's like, I need to make some money in order to keep eating and have a roof over my head.
Right. Yeah.
So we both concentrated on just having careers for a while. Steph went and became an RN, and I went and became a video game developer.
Oh, nice. So that,
yeah.
Are you passionate about video games?
I mean, I don't think you'll meet a lot of video game developers who aren't.
Right. Exactly. It's something.
It's why we put up with the bullshit industry conditions. So, and I mean, I had to keep moving cities, like, for my job, and I had to work some pretty brutal hours. So, but like, there was always a riff-shaped hole in my life when I wasn't actively playing in a band.
Yeah.
So then in 2017, like, I just got to a point in my career where things started slowing down a bit, and I just longed to play riffs again. But by this time I lived in Halifax and Steph lived in Calgary. So I just wrote a bunch of new material, and I mean, it turned out she couldn't commit the time, what with like literally saving people's lives every day.
Yeah.
And it's not like I can get mad at her about that, but another longtime friend of ours who I've played in other bands with said he'd step in and play drums. And so that is how the new record was made.
That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, listen, being, an RN, especially over the last little while, has to be just, I mean, it's a bit of a thankless task, and it's an incredible undertaking, because it's been a rough couple of years for people in the medical field.
They should all get fucking medals as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's the delicate balance though, right? Being a musician, and especially I find, being, and I'm talking from experience, because I was a musician. I still consider myself a musician, but I still am. But I'm not, I'm happy with the fact that I don't do it like I used to, because I'm sure you'll be able to attest to this. When you really do music, like the way you've done it and the way that I've done it, it's hard to go back and do it part-time. For me, when you've done it at a certain level and you've toured and you've put out records and you've tried to make it your main thing, to go back and play in cover bands on the weekend, like, it's just, it was something that didn't work for me. It was either like an all or nothing kind of thing. So to find that balance where you can enjoy music again, but still have a job, it's a tough spot for a lot of musicians to, I don't know if it's a tough pill to swallow, but it's a tough thing to find the balance. But some people, when they successfully do it, like, are you at a point now where you're okay saying, hey, I'm in this band, the band does what it does when it does, but I have another job and I'm okay with having the two in my life? Because that's a tough spot for a lot of musicians to get to.
I'm freelance now, so
Right.
I can go tour basically whenever I want.
Right.
That said, finding a drummer who can do the same, it might be a little tricky. So we'll see how it goes. But this is definitely, I'm stoked to be back. I'm so stoked to play live again and to tour again.
So you have a new album coming out March 25th, I believe, and you guys are still with Sonic Onion. Yep. And judging from the artwork and stuff, I mean, there seems to be like a rad, like, fantasy vibe to this band. Is that the theme that runs throughout the music?
Man, I tried so long to keep my nerdiness and my music separate, but it didn't work. The continents have collided. It just kind of seeped in, and there's a bit of a concept to this album, which is best related. Did you get a physical copy?
I have not gotten a physical, but I saw the cover, and I mean, right away I see a ship, and I'm like, this like has a Viking vibe to it, and I'm like, this is rad.
There's a little mini graphic novel inside the liner. We wanted to do something nice for people who are still buying physical media.
Right.
So there's a little graphic novel in the liner that was illustrated by me and who was written by my friend, the game writer, who wrote on Assassin's Creed Origins and Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This isn't the kind of thing where you're going to go in when you're writing songs that's, it's going to be about, a crappy situation that happened in your life or a relationship. It's going to be about, people coming and conquering a land.
A little both.
A little bit. And what I like about this, there's a lot of bands that'll do straight up technical metal, but I'm a big stoner rock guy. I grew up obviously loving Sabbath. I'm a big Caius fan. All the stuff that Frank Kozik put out on Man's Ruin, all that stuff. Like I love stoner rock, and I felt that a lot of the riffs were like really sludgy, really doomy, but the vocals brought it to another place. So finding that sound and the themes, like where did that all come from? Was that just the two of you spitballing back and forth?
Yeah,
or?
mostly. I mean, I have a pretty wide, I have a lot of influences musically, and I
Right.
can't seem to stay monogamous to a subgenre, as it were.
Yeah.
But I like the crushing, heavy despair of doom, but I do very much like the groove of stoner, more stonery vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of the lyrical themes, can you talk a bit on those?
The theme that just kind of runs through the whole record is having to leave home and never being able to go back.
Okay.
Hence the exile, and the little boat person that you that you picked up on. It was a theme that's popped up in my life over the past 10 years, and it's also the theme of the little graphic novel. I don't want to spoil it for you because I want to send you copies.
Okay. All right.
So that's all I'll say.
In terms of touring, you mentioned that you guys toured a lot. You toured North America. Were there ever points when you were on stage and you let's say you opened up for a band that you didn't think, like, what were some of the highlights in terms of some of the bands you might have opened up for?
Oh man, we really liked touring with Kenmo, if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, of course.
We did a mini tour with them that was really fun. We played with a band called Mortals in Brooklyn. This is still one of my favorite bands. We got to meet one of my musical heroes, Julie Christmas, from the band Made Out of Babies. She actually showed up. She showed up to one of our shows in New York, and she said the words "I'm a fan," and I was like, "Play it cool, Trez. Play it cool." Almost had a heart attack. Yeah, there's so many. There's so many awesome memories, but I'm mostly stoked about making more.
Yeah, well, that's it. So do you have plans coming up in terms of a touring schedule and stuff? Like, I mean, the record's coming out. Do you guys have plans? And I know saying that is very easy just to throw that out there, but the world, I mean, I do believe the world is coming back now. We're at a point where there's a lot of light coming through that little pinhole that was there a while back. So are you feeling that there's going to be some good touring in the future?
That's a lovely way to put it, by the way.
Right. Thank you.
I'm pretty on the spectrum of COVID public health paranoia. I'm on the very paranoid end of the spectrum. So
okay.
I'd like to wait until things have cooled down like a fair bit in terms of, because touring is actually a pretty dangerous activity that that's not something people discuss. Like the amount of time you spend on the highway, like,
oh yeah.
The amount of time you spend parked in like dodgy areas of the city, like, and I've managed to get just a cold on pretty much every tour I've ever gone on. So,
so there's no rush. There's no rush for you to get back out on the road.
Yeah, there is, but we're gonna play it. We're gonna try and play it cautious for now.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. And I know that when you do put out a record, it's kind of like giving birth. And it's like watching your kid go out into the world and like, oh man, what's going to happen? Do you get feelings like that when you put a record out?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it's kind of weird feeling like what with the touring situation. It's like your child has to be held back a grade, basically.
Right.
And I'm certainly feeling that now, but I also don't want to shove it out of the nest before, if I know there's like a pit of spikes underneath.
In going back to the game developing, what goes into that? And how did you fall into that? Is it because you were a visual artist?
Yeah, that's I'm a game artist, and so I just do the art part.
Okay.
Some of the stuff that the other disciplines do, that's wizardry as far as I'm concerned.
Right. So you do the art part.
Yes.
Okay, so you'll sit down and if someone says, okay, we want to do, like, let's say we're doing Assassin's Creed and we need X amount of characters, you'll be someone that'll help develop those actual characters? Like they'll flesh them out?
Basically.
So that's got to be satisfying when you see your stuff that, a character that you help create being played by nerds all over the world. And
it's a thrill that never quite goes away.
And is it, so this is, you were mentioning you freelance, so you're still working in that industry?
Yep.
Do you have cool stuff on the go now that you're working on that you can't talk about?
I do, and I definitely can't talk about it. I've switched to, I work for indie studios mostly now. So like the massive hype machine around them is not quite as mighty, but I find it super, super satisfying.
So some of the games you worked on in the past, you mentioned Assassin's Creed. Can you tell me some of the stuff that you worked on?
I worked on Mortal Kombat X. Is probably that's probably the biggest one. Yeah.
And you helped develop one of those characters? Which one?
No, I wasn't a character artist at the time. I was an intern, so
okay. But you got to work on that game. That's pretty crazy. I mean, see, Mortal Kombat I can play because Mortal Kombat's like, it's a button masher, right? As you guys call them, button mashers.
Yeah, it's a funny game. If you ever play Mortal Kombat X, there's an icon in that game that you can unlock that is a little hand throwing up the metal horns, and that's actually a photo of my hand.
Really?
Yeah, I had to make the icon, so I took a photo of my hand throwing up the metal horns, and I just photoshopped it to make it look like it was severed. But if you see that icon in that game, it's my hand.
That's amazing. I'm going to look for it. So it seems to me that you've been able to find a passion in music, which you still have, and then a passion in what you do for work, which is kind of a win-win.
I feel lucky every day of my life.
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of people, and that's what I was trying to allude to before when I was talking about, musicians are in a tough spot because until you get to that, you're always reaching for that brass ring, and sometimes it's out of reach. But when you do grab it, it's not easy to hold on to it because it'll come and go in musicians' careers. So I just always feel for musicians because it's a tough spot, because it's almost like being an addict, because you're addicted to, there's a rush that comes with performing live. There's a rush with connecting with people there's a lot of highs and then there's a lot of lows. So I find when musicians can find a way to create and keep that creative, that creative spark going in another area and find that, marry the two and have a career as well as have that as a passion still, sounds like you're in a good spot.
It really is it's a tricky balance. However, I think everybody should have more than just one thing in their life. I've just looked at like a lot of how a lot of people I know, like a lot of musicians I know and live music people have suffered over the course of the pandemic. And it's good to be passionate about multiple things, like which are not related.
Right. And today people are going to be seeing this on International Women's Day. What do you think the space is like since you've been doing music for, I guess, for a good amount of time now? Have you seen the space shift for women in metal?
I wish I could say it had shifted more than it has. I think that women who are up and coming playing heavy music today face the exact same bullshit I did decades ago. Yeah. I guess the positive side to that is amazing women are making amazing music in enormous quantities. Like if I look at like my most spun records of the past couple of years, they're very lady heavy. Right.
So I think, music in general is in a pretty good spot. But I find, for women, there's always been an uphill battle because, there's always this extra layer of bullshit that you have to deal with. But with the metal community, I find it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit more open. It seems a little bit more accepting than other genres.
I think metal is a little bit bipolar in that
it's very well put.
I've found that with regards to us being women, like the two original founders of this band being women and two original only members, people I feel have very fiercely advocated for us, partially because of that. And people have also super not liked us because of that. But whatever.
Doesn't seem like you're really concerned about it.
Not particularly. A lot of people just don't give a shit too, which is great.
Trez, thank you for taking the time to chat with us. I'm glad you were able to be part of this. And I'm really looking forward to finally seeing you live, because all the footage I've seen, everything I've heard, I have to see how all this noise is made, because it's it blows my mind, because it sounds like there's 1,000 people on stage.
Well, thank you.
And continued success. And thanks again for taking the time.
My pleasure.
I always love it when bands embrace their nerdy side and will add that extra element to physical media, like a graphic novel.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. That really screams, hey, buy this, it's important. Like I just did the same thing with this Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. I bought the Star-Lord album on vinyl because it came with the limited edition comic book.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, take a cue from that. If you want to save physical media, make physical media something physical.
Yeah, no, any bells and whistles or anything you can add to it always help. So just a great chat and a talented young lady, you know, when she was mentioning some of the stuff the work she was doing in video games and stuff. Yeah, that was really, really cool. I really, really, and Ryan, did you get a chance to listen to them? I mean,
That's a big voice. That's a big voice.
that is a big voice to come out of that little person.
Yeah, and great riffs too. Like it's really cool, especially like for like people who essentially it was like two band members, but to have a sound that big
Yeah.
always impresses me. But then again, you know, Meg White represent. I should not be surprised that two people can make that much noise together and make make songs that big.
That's the thing, you know, if you've got certain sounds dialed in, you can do a lot with two or three people. Next, we're going to go to the Netherlands to talk to Milena Eva. She is the lead singer of the band Gold. How do you spell Gold? GGGOLDDD. They've got an album coming out called This Shame Should Not Be Mine. Some key tracks on it are Invisible and Notes on How to Trust. This was a very, very powerful chat. This is a lady that is has been through hell and back, and she's documented it through her music. And I'm really, really happy to present our chat today on the Rockman Power Hour. All right, I'm really, really happy to have with me all the way from the Netherlands, Milena from the band Gold. Now, is it Gold or is it
We joke about that as well, but I would say it's just Gold. Yeah,
it's just Gold. Okay, I mean, you have to when you have a name like that, you know, you're open to someone's stuttering or.
Yeah, I know. Well, we just changed the name actually. Before it was just Gold, but I mean, try Googling that. It's impossible. So
right.
we changed
it's actually pretty smart. Yeah. And I think it's a way to keep gold, but it's a way to make it original. So it's actually pretty smart. Yeah. You've got a new album called This Shame That Should Not Be Mine. And it sounds like it's a pretty heavy record in the sense of the subject matter. It seems very personal. But the two songs that I've heard, Notes on How to Trust and Invisible. Right away, those song titles say, okay, we're not dealing with Motley Crue lyrics here. We're dealing with stuff that seems to be pretty serious and pretty personal. Was this a hard record for you to put together?
Oof, very hard. I mean, it still kind of is. The album is obviously done, but rehearsing the songs or playing the songs live is pretty heavy as well. Yeah, it's a very personal album. I mean, our music was always already very personal, but with this album I kind of opened up even more about something that I didn't really even tell my friends before I wrote this album. Or I wrote the lyrics. Yeah.
Right. And do you find that now that you have that out in the world, that you're able to kind of, I don't want to say see it, because a lot of times when someone's been through trauma, they'll say, write what you've been through. And then when you can see it on paper, it comes out of you. But to have it come out of you in a song and to be able to have it there for the world to hear and to share, does it make the burden a little bit lighter?
In a way, yeah. It's also a bit harder, I guess, because now I have to talk about it all the time. Yeah. But I mean, I'm happy to do so because, the reason I started writing this was just the first song I wrote was just to relieve myself from this story.
Sure.
And somehow one song became two, and then suddenly we had a whole album. But I guess opening up about it and saying it was really one of the things I really wanted to do, because the trauma happened to me a long time ago, and back then there weren't really artists opening up about these kind of things. And I wish if there would have been one artist that would have said this happened to me as well, or I mean, even a friend, but definitely artists. If I would have been able to listen to an album with lyrics like this that I could see myself in or recognize myself in, that would have been amazing. Yeah.
And I think it's so important for artists that they have something to relate to, that they have an artist to look to, that as a bit of a beacon, I guess, or a lighthouse. But you have a lot of men that have sung about trauma. You have a lot of men that have made songs, but for women, you're right, because I feel that in society, women's roles have always been, well, you have to be strong, you have to be quiet, you have to just follow along, put your head down. And that's not the case. I mean, human beings as a whole have conditions that they go through. So I know exactly what you mean by, not having that person to say, I went through this, here, listen to, what I went through. So I think what you're doing is a great service for a lot of young women.
Thanks. Well, what's interesting is that it's also, I mean, I don't want to say it's a service. You can say that, of course, but to me, it's just like, let's, no, I understand. Yeah. I mean, it was just like, if there's just only one person that gets something out of this, I would have been happy. But I have to say that I also got a lot of response from men that went through this,
sure,
which I think is super interesting, that this is something that is even more of a taboo than
right.
women telling. I mean, obviously, a lot has changed in the past, let's say 5 or 10 years regarding, I mean, the Me Too movement and everything else. But it's pretty interesting that there's still even a lot of men going through this and not being able to share this story because it's just so shameful, I guess. Yeah.
And that's the thing, there's so much shame around trauma, and there's so many different facets to it and different, sides to it where, there's shame because it could have been, the trauma could have been from someone who was close to you, who was a trusting figure, like all these things that come into play. So, and that's what I mean by a service. You probably didn't think of it as like, I'm going to be this, beacon of light for people, but it ends up happening because that's what happens when people are transparent and people are honest. I find that it's infectious, and that people that do need a bit of guidance, they gravitate towards that. So you'll probably end up being a role model to a lot more people than you think.
So who knows?
Be prepared.
Let's see. Yeah.
But purely the music, there's a really original sound to this, but at the same time, there's things I find I've heard, but are familiar, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. In terms of musical influences, who were your guiding lights for music?
This is such a hard question. There's so many artists I like, and especially, I mean, with this album, before we were more like a guitar-driven band, and with this album, we were just like, fuck it, whoever needs guitars anyway, kind of.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we're definitely in this. There's a lot of guitars on this album still, but we wanted to just take it in the right music in this like really naive way. So just try any other instrument and just see what would happen. So there's a lot of layers of software synths in it, and we use a lot of electronic like samples, beats, all that kind of stuff. I think that definitely, I think we were definitely influenced by a lot of electronic music that comes from, well, Europe, for example, like Amnesia Scanner, or Archives are really an artist that we really love. So I think those are artists that are definitely very contemporary.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been listening to Portishead, for example, since I was, I guess, 11 years old or something.
Sure.
And that's something that really comes through all of our music, I think. I mean, when it comes to singing about personal stuff, that's definitely one of the artists that I really, really love. Yeah.
It's funny, being the age that I'm 51, so I grew up when a lot of the electronic music was in its infancy, and you were seeing crossovers, like bands like Joy Division, bands like New Order. Yeah. I mean, that was, and they were especially Joy Division. It was the subject matter was dark, but it was personal, and it's funny how this music ends up being bulletproof over time. I mean, it stands up, and you see. Yeah. You can see the Joy Division tree and all the branches that have come off of that tree.
Definitely.
It's great to see the resurgence of electronic music, and especially now, when you're a kid, that it's so much easier to grab a computer and program than it is to pick up an instrument. And
oh my, I guess a lot of albums were written in the last 2 years in lockdown and everything. I mean, we started writing all this new music in our own home behind our computers. I mean, it's such a different world. You don't really have to have a rehearsal space with band members or whatever. You can just do it on your own. Yeah,
it's great.
I mean, it's more fun with other people, but you don't have to. Yeah.
I come from a music background. I was a musician at one point. In my life, there was a time where I was a musician. That's what I did. And I remember going to rehearsal would be such a chore. You'd all have to get together,
Yeah.
and then there's always somebody that's 45 minutes late, and you're sitting around, and then imagine
I know, right?
right, and you're the singer, right, and I'm a
Yeah.
singer. I don't play anything, so I'm waiting around for everybody to get there, and they're all gonna, oh, let's try that part again, and I'm like, could someone just bring me, like, just drop me into this situation when
Yeah.
the music's ready, so I don't have to sit around
Yeah.
here and listen to someone drum or tune their drum head. But now you can just do everything on computer, and it's great.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that takes away from the social aspect of it.
Maybe a little bit. I mean, we were a band before going electronic as well. So for us, it was just like this little bit of a change. We still have to be in the rehearsal space with 6 of us.
Yeah.
And there's definitely always somebody 45 minutes late. And it's a lot of waiting around, I know, but I kind of love that as well. I mean, it's so nice to play live music. We actually did a rehearsal for the release show of this album last Wednesday, and it was really amazing because we were playing with 5 violinists.
Oh wow.
As well, so we were on stage with 11 people, and there's something so magical about playing music together. I mean, obviously writing stuff at home on your own and maybe not even for the world to know about it is amazing, but playing that on a stage or in a rehearsal space with just so many people and then getting all of that together is the most amazing thing to me. Yeah.
So the new album's coming out April 1st.
Yes.
And what are the touring plans? Are there touring plans?
There's definitely touring plans. Well, the release show that we'll do is on Roadburn Festival, which is in Tilburg here in the Netherlands. That will be amazing because then we will play with live violinists. And after that, I'm not entirely sure what's on the agenda yet.
Yeah,
but I know that we'll definitely do a lot of touring. I hope we can do some summer festivals, but I mean, it's been such a weird thing. I feel like 1 month ago, we weren't even sure that we were ever going to play ever. So it's still in the making, but yeah, we'll definitely tour. I hope so.
We put this together for International Women's Day. It is International Women's Day today. The first day if people are listening to the podcast. What would be a piece of advice or some words of wisdom that you would give to an up and coming female artist?
Just go for it, I guess. Don't give a shit about all the stupid questions that people ask you, like how it feels to be a woman in music or whatever. Just forget about that. And but I would definitely consider myself a feminist, and I think I would also consider myself an intersectional feminist, and I think that is really important, that you see that it's not only that every person is equal, and also it doesn't really depend on where people are from or what kind of women you like back up or believe in. I feel like it would be really interesting to see the way I was brought up, and I think a lot of women were brought up this way, was just that there's always this like beef between women somehow.
Yeah.
And I really love it when women get together and do stuff together. So I think what's most important is to keep other women close, to see their qualities. And also, I mean, we have a woman technician, for example. Our bass player is a woman as well. We really try to, I would love it if there would be more women in music generally. And I mean, not necessarily on stage, but I mean, everywhere.
And every job. It's funny. I saw Refused at Play a Festival in Canada, and I'm a big Refused fan, and I love Dennis. I think he's just a wonderful human. And he came out on stage and he goes, I looked at the bill today. I looked at the lineup. There's 80 bands playing. He goes, 4 of them have women. He goes, what the fuck is wrong with the world? And it was just so powerful. And I remember this was 6-7 years ago, but I'm seeing the change now. I'm seeing it happen slowly. I'm seeing more women have the courage to say, I want to do this. And I shouldn't be left to the sides and putting my head down and, guys do this better. They don't, there's some, and that's one of the things, and again, I'm a little bit older, so I always think back to this. My time in music was the best, but I love the decade of the 90s, because the 90s I felt were a really open decade for music, and there were so many incredible female artists in the
Mm.
90s, you know, that I still listen to, you know, like Fiona Apple, Tori Amos. There were, you know, Alanis Morissette. There were so many great artists.
PJ Harvey.
PJ Harvey, exactly. There was
100% PJ Harvey for me.
Bjork too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Bjork, of course.
right.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God.
So it was
Yeah,
a great
about Bjork.
decade. And it's funny because I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I'm so proud of her because she is her own person, and she doesn't look at it like she just loves music for music. And I love seeing her gravitate towards a lot of that older stuff. And she'll be like, oh, Dad, Fiona Apple. Like, I love Fiona Apple. And it makes me so proud because I always saw those qualities in those artists because they just did music. And I've never looked at it as, I look at, you know, you're either a good person or you're a shitty person. The rest of it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And
So-
I mean, a lot of women get this idea that, I mean, that other women are competition or something like that.
Yeah.
But I really feel it isn't like that. I mean, if you look at a bill like at the show you went to from Refused,
right.
probably there's from all the bands that were playing, and 90% of the men even look the same.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even visually are just like white, whatever age, similar kind of guys. And somehow there's always this competition between women, but it doesn't really, I mean, don't focus on it. I mean, it's just do whatever you want to do, and don't see that, don't buy that competition kind of idea. I mean, it's just there's room for everyone. I'm
Agree.
100% sure. Yeah.
And you can't keep something unless you give it away. So that's
Exactly.
that's a good one. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And I hope to see you in Canada sometime. It'll be great to see
that
this
would be
band live.
amazing. Oh, I wish. Let's do that.
Yes. Continued success, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Awesome. What a lovely person, and such a cool band too.
Oh,
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just from the promo photos, you know, she's dressed as Joan of Arc, and she's got full armor on. I was just like, wow, right away you're taken from those pictures. And I'm looking forward to finally being able to see them here in Canada. Another band that is like just popping right now in Europe. So really, really glad we got to talk to her. So next up today on our special episode celebrating women for International Women's Day, we're going to talk to someone who I've known for quite a while. I first met her probably about 9 years ago when she put out her first album, or she was in the process of putting out her first album. She had been a guest on my radio show a few times, and I followed her career for a while. We've become friends, and I got to tell you, you know, this lady grew up in a house where music was everywhere around her. Her dad's Neil Osborne from the band 5440, so 5440, you know, Canadian rock royalty, as I like to refer them as, and Kandle grew up around music her whole life, and I think she knew from a young age she was going to be a musician. And this is a great chat because you get to really, really see what musicians go through. It's not always the easiest road, but Kandle's an artist I believed in for a long, long time. I think she's got a tremendous amount of potential, and she's shown it in the music she's recorded. Her new album, Set the Fire, is just phenomenal. It's just so good. And I'm a big fan of records that bring you to another place, and that's a record that brings me to another place. Her voice is unique, and she's definitely a talent to be reckoned with. So here's my conversation with Kandle. The funny thing is, I can't get mad at you because I asked you to wake up at 7 a.m.
Dude, I'm a musician. I got up at 6:30 for you, which is really hard. And then my computer broke, like full on. Computer broke, so I was rummaging through my roommate's room, and I was like guessing her password. And then working, and then I realized her Wi-Fi was off. I was like, "Fuck, what do I do?" And then there's only 2 of these so far. There needs more.
Is that coffee?
Hmm.
Okay, good. All right. As long as it's nothing worse.
What's worse than coffee?
The hair of the dog that bit you the night before. You know, sometimes if you have a couple of those, that'll help you. But
I can't really drink, and I'm still hungover every day. It's amazing. One of my many talents is feeling like shit.
Well, thank you for agreeing to be on. I know it was last minute, and but we really wanted to do something fun for International Women's Day. So we put together a really cool show with a bunch of really strong female artists, and it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be really, really cool. So I'm glad you agreed to be part
You're
of it.
making it.
Yeah.
Everything you make is cool.
I try.
You have that in common.
Yeah. So you're going back out on the road for the first time in forever. How does that feel?
I'm really weirded out by it.
Okay.
Like some people are just very eager and excited, and I think, it's like the most natural thing in the world for them. But like for me, I mean, as you know, I'm a highly sensitive person, and
Yeah.
I spent 2 years like afraid to go to the grocery store and like haven't seen a human face. So like,
right, or at least half, or at least the full one.
yeah, so to be like on a stage again, in the next 2 weeks, I'm actually forcing myself to go to some friend shows and stuff to just remember what it's like. And I went last night and saw a girlfriend of mine, Louise Burns, play in a band called Golden Youth, and I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, so we stand up there and what do we do?
Yeah, it's weird, like I'm somebody that used to go to a lot of live shows, and the first live shows I went back to, the last show that I went to before the pandemic was, we did a rock room at Shome, and we had the beaches, it was actually for International Women's Day, which is ironic because it was 2 years ago today.
Yeah, because that was the first day I started making my new record, and we got quarantined in the studio.
Right. Well, there you go. So everything kind of went to shit, and the first live shows I went to were at FMR up in BCB, which you've been to, right? You've played. Yeah. So, and that festival, I was, leaving to go to that festival, saying to myself, how are they going to be able to do that distance? Because that place is usually, gets pretty messy halfway through the weekend, but it felt great to go to a live show again. And I remember, but there was this whole panic, like, am I going to get COVID? Like, I have a mask on. Some people don't have masks on anymore. So this just whole panic. And then when I finally got COVID, right before Christmas, I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I'm like, all right, I have it. I'm positive. I got a PCR. I'm positive. I did all the tests I needed to do. And then I'm sitting there waiting for this horrible thing to happen. And no, it was like, I've had worse colds, but I think it's just the buildup of all of the people saying, over the last, all the stories you've heard, and I'm not belittling anything, because I know a lot of people did get really sick. A lot of people lost their lives, but there's also the panic that so talking about that, but it does feel good when you go to a live show again, because then it's kind of like going back to the gym when you haven't been in 2 years, and then you finally go back, and it's that first day where you're like, oh, this is gonna suck, and then you do it and you feel good, but then 2 days later you are in so much pain, you can't walk, you can't sit, you can't go to the bathroom, you're just like, I shouldn't have done those squats, but then you get back, it's like muscle memory. So I'm sure once you get back on stage, it's going to be like nothing. It's going to be the same.
I'm hoping it'll be like that. I did 3 shows in Toronto early December, like 3 in a row after nothing.
I remember talking to you before them, and you were nervous as hell.
And then I got sick for 2 months after. And I'm like, what is that saying? Like I was working up the courage, I'm like, I got this. It's going to be like riding a bike. I've been doing this my whole life. And then first I got COVID, and then I was in the ER, and like I was down for 2 months on like 6 different antibiotics. And I'm like, so is that what happens when I take my mask off and sing? Because that sucks.
That sucks. Well, one thing I've always liked about you is, I was looking through before we got on the phone, before I got on Zoom, I was looking through, and I remember I found this from,
no way.
But what I really liked was I found this, and it really, I love keeping things. I love like memories and stuff. And this gave me an actual date. So this is the 5th of March, 2014. And that was your album launch. That was your album launch.
Wow.
So, and I remember Dare to Care reached out to me and asked me if I would intro you. So I introed your album launch. And so it made me realize it's been 8 years. So it's a while. And what I like about you is that you don't give up. And because I recognize the talent early on, but you don't give up, and you've achieved some really cool things in your career, but you don't give up. No matter what no matter what adversity you face, you always find a way to come across on the other side of it. And I remember when you launched this record, and then I remember when you started doing some stuff with Jack White, and it was crazy. Like all these things were happening, because I really believe that people will recognize talent, but sometimes an artist just needs to go through these trials and tribulations to get to the other side of it. And I don't know what it is, but when you get validation from outside people that have no skin in the game and are just looking at you as an artist, and you get that kind of validation like you've gotten, to me, it says you're on the right track. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, I guess I mean, most of my career has been getting screwed over and
Yeah.
betrayed. And like, yeah, I'm happy that you still see me that way, because honestly, I get pretty tired of fighting. And once you've achieved a certain level of success, like I had, and then, you know, like was left in a situation with no team and nothing but an NDA, I'm like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
far I've fallen. And it's really hard. Like I miss having a team. I'm definitely a team player, and I'm a person that really likes collaboration and validation, because I'm an insecure songwriter, and everything I do now I do completely alone. And I
Yeah.
write a song and I have no one to send it to, and I have an idea and I have no one to tell, and it's like
It's
definitely
different.
not what I wanted at all. And it's cool that I've got control over everything for the first time in my life. I own all my records again for the first time in my life, but I also don't really want to be that person. Like I didn't start writing songs to be in the music industry. The music industry is something I've always hated.
Right.
And I've experienced like the worst of it that
Yeah.
can be imagined. And I'm like, no, this isn't what I want. I just wanted to make the art.
But the thing is, you're still making the art, which means that
Oh, yeah.
you have stuff that needs to come out, and the art that you're making is good. I mean, the new record's really, really solid. And I told you that from when I first heard it to now. I've listened to it. It sat with me. And I think you're doing it for the right reasons, because you need to create. And that's what I like. You don't give up because it has to come out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a few times, especially when I was in my like third legal battle or whatever, that I was like, what am I doing this for? I should just stop. I'm so tired. I'm so over it. And I just kept writing songs. And I realized when I'm writing songs, it's the only time in my life that I'm in that like flow state. And it's the only time I experience like pure joy.
Right.
is the creative process. It's not all the rest of it for me. Like performing, you know, I've always had anxiety, but I like performing, and all the other parts of the job. I love making the visual art, and I love playing with people, but it's the creative process and creating a song that like gets me off and gets me excited and like makes me feel like I have a purpose. So I kind of feel like I have no choice but to do that. And obviously I'm deep in writing the next one already.
Right. So now that you put Set the Fire came out, this is 2021, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when this came out, the launch was obviously underwhelming because you couldn't do anything, right? But the thing is, the record's there, and now you can push the record, and now you're going out on the road and you're starting to do stuff. Is it exciting? I mean, when you did those 3 shows in Toronto and the prospect of playing some of these songs live, are you excited about that again?
Yes and no. So like I don't have a band anymore, right? So I have some cool people that's for hire, and I've kind of picked a set that I know like can do no wrong.
Right.
Because we have one rehearsal before we hit the road, and I'm like, that wouldn't be ideal. So like a song like Honey Trap on the record, which I've been dying to do live, I don't think we're gonna do, because it changes tempo 4 times.
Yeah.
It has like 8 backing vocal parts, and we have 1 4-hour rehearsal that my bass player can't attend. So it's like, yeah, but to me, this is classic Kandle. This is always how it is for you. And you come out on the other end of it and you come out on top. So it's just, I think there's something charming about the shit show of it all. Like it is rock and roll, you know, and we're going to stand there and we're going to play a show, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be funny, and it's going to be powerful. It'll probably just be a little messy.
So you mentioned that you're already into writing the new record. Do you find that now with a bit, and this is a common thing I've gotten from a lot of artists that have had this 2-year break, do you find that you've kind of gotten yourself in a position where you're ahead of the game for the first time? If the trajectory continues, like you'll have music ready? And
no, during COVID, I think was the busiest I've ever been in my life, to the point that like I got quite unhealthy.
Right.
But I was so like I won my legal battle the first day of the lockdown. So I had been
Wow.
waiting for 4 years to be allowed to release music again, to be allowed to do anything because I was stuck in a deal.
Right.
And so I basically said, F this, I'm starting my own company. And I worked my ass off all through COVID. I built my team. I became my own label, my own manager, all these things for the first time. And I worked so hard that I definitely lost it a few times and a
Yeah.
few big crashes and it got total burnout. And yeah, I thought it would do more, to be honest, but it is really hard independent. Like there was
Yeah.
a lot of things I was very excited about. And like, you know, it was the first woman on the independent woman on the Ready to Rock cover on Spotify and like
Yeah.
getting great reviews and stuff. But it didn't do as much as I wanted. And I recognize that that is because I'm on my own. I'm completely on my own now doing this. I don't have a project manager. I don't have a budget. Like everything I do
Is you.
is me. And
Right.
that's really, really hard. So even though I'm writing the next record, I don't think I want to do it all again. Like it kind of kills it for me. You know, the business side is so not creative. It's not me. And I honestly think now I have the skills that I could be someone else's manager.
Sure, of course. No, well, that's the thing, right? And it's, listen, I know from experience. I mean,
Right?
I've been somebody who's been on the other side of it, like you,
Yeah.
come out on the other end of it where I don't have anything to do with it anymore. Like I love music, but the idea of going out and pushing a record makes me want to vomit personally. But the idea of having, you know, a team behind you, I feel like I know exactly how you feel. Like when you're talking about like all I ever wanted was to have a career manager. I always said to myself, I'd love to have somebody that was there for me from the beginning that I could trust. You know, this idea that, you know, it would be like all those bands you see in those documentaries where like, you know, they helped me from the beginning and, you know, they're there together 40 years sitting back, you know, having iced tea on a porch going, I'm so glad we never fucking happened.
I know.
I met every snake in the world that tried to fucking rob me. So I get it. I totally get it. But I'm telling you, from somebody outside looking in, you have to keep creating. It's important. The space needs you. So, and the hard work that you've put in as an independent artist, doing things on your own, it's going to pay off in the end when things do hit and you have everything. It's just that road sometimes is like, are you fucking kidding me? You know?
Yeah, there's been a lot of that. and yeah, like I'm jealous of those artists and I'm jealous of those bands, and I try to not have an unhealthy approach about it because I'm also very happy for them. And my
Sure.
dad is one of them, you know.
Well, this is listen, I have never in the entire time that we've talked and we've chatted many times. I've never ever brought up your dad because to
Really?
me, never, not in an interview, never, because to
He's
me,
my best friend.
well, no, but this is the thing. So I do want to ask you about your dad because I've always looked at it as, yeah, okay, your dad is Canadian rock royalty. I mean, he's a guy who's so respected in the industry, but it's important to me that people recognize you for who you are. You know, you're not just Neil's daughter, you're Kandle. And I've always looked at you as Kandle, but I need to ask you now, after all these years of you doing it, how does your dad feel about that? All this does your dad ever, because I have a daughter, and the first thing I would want to do if someone was shitty with my daughter, I'd want to go out there and fucking kill them. Has your dad ever been like, God damn it?
Yeah, he definitely has. I mean, he's like old school rock star, right?
I know. Yeah.
So he says all the time, if he had to do 5% of what I had to do, he would have quit a long
Right.
time ago.
Right.
And if you try to tell him to do anything other than the music, like he will yell at you. Like, it's not like,
so if people don't know, your dad is Neil Osborne from 5440, who I got to see. I saw them play. It's got to be in the late 80s at Cafe Campus when it used to be, and your dad will remember this, when it used to be up on Queen Mary near Université de Montréal. And so your dad's seen some shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But he's one of those rare, beautiful, lucky stories where the band met in high school.
Yeah.
They've had the same manager since they were 19. They FaceTime twice a week for fun.
Yeah.
They hang out together outside of music for fun. and they love each other, and they just celebrated their 40th anniversary. And I'm like, what is that?
So for you growing up with
That's
that,
what I wanted.
that's what for you, that's what being a band was. So I understand.
And that's what I think has been so heartbreaking for me, is like that above all else was what I wanted to achieve, that like that
Yeah.
community, that family, that like we're in this together. And it's really hard to motivate yourself alone and get excited about something alone. Like even when I'm working on a song that I think is really sick, I'm looking around and I just see Pussy Galore and I'm like, are you into this? I'm like, I don't know what to, and I sent it to Dad and he's like, sounds like music. And I'm like, not helpful, man.
Yeah, you had a project with your dad. You guys did. What was that like? What was it like to finally to perform and create with your dad?
Oh, it's super funny. It turns into like a comedy act. And that record is finally going to be coming out this year, which will be great. And yeah, my old management and old label, they wouldn't let me do anything. So it just sat on the shelf for like 5 years. And now we're going to put that one out independently too. And the whole point of that record and that whole project is just to have fun. We just like, the songs are really cool. They're very like bluesy, hillbilly-ish, dark rock, like desert jams. And
Nice.
And we just want to have fun with it. Like everything else is so serious, and he wanted to do something different from 5440, and I wanted to do something different than having to be my own business boss all the time, which I hate. So we started playing dress up essentially and being like little kids.
So when you think about it, you've got a lot of fun stuff coming up on the horizon.
I guess so. I just have to get my head on straight, Well, I have to control the anxiety.
I think I've been a supporter for a long time. I'm a believer, that, and I think that the world will come around, and the world, because everybody I talk to about you says the same thing. They say, "Man, why is she not bigger than she is?" And that's always been the same comment I get. And I think it's just because the path is you're heading on that path, and you're on the road you're supposed to be for a reason. And I'm telling you,
how do you think that?
You'll be fine. It's going to work out. Everything's going to work out.
That is different. I'm like 6 bad managers, 3 bad labels, a lot of abuse and trauma. But the records are good. I think you're going to do great. And I'm really, I love the new record. From the minute I put it on, I thought it was super strong. And I think that 2022 is going to be a good year for you. Ooh, I hope so. I'm throwing all this. I'm throwing all this love and light your way. So it's just good. Absorb. I need it. It's an emo dark bitch. And lastly, I just wanted to ask you, because it is International Women's Day, and we've had some really interesting women on the podcast today. What advice would you give? And I can't wait for this answer. But what advice would you give an up and coming woman in music? Can I write a novel about that? Yes, you can. You've got all the time you want. Yeah, you need. I mean, I personally see that this has already been changing in the music industry, and that makes me so happy. Yeah. But my main piece of advice would be to always follow your instincts and your gut. And even when you're tempted with everything you could have ever wanted, your dreams, do you want to be a star? How bad do you want it? We're on your side. If you have a bad feeling, it's probably right, and listen to it. And trying to make music and change yourself and change your own morals and what you're comfortable with doing to please industry people never works. Or if it does, you end up messed up and very unhappy. So just always be stubborn about what you want to put out into the world. And if you end up in a place that you hate with songs that you regret, it's much worse than, having to be like me and be independent and be doing what you want. Because at least I know that everything I do is my decision, and no more do I have a bunch of big studio men telling me what I need to be, or how sexy I need to be, or how to make them happy, or if I have my period or not in the goddamn studio. So don't listen to anybody but yourself. Love it.
Thanks
Or
for taking.
call me for advice. I will answer. I will answer any young female artist that wants a hand or an ear. I will be there.
I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your advice, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be part of this today. Thank you so much.
I will always wake up at 6:30 for you, and no one else. Nobody else.
You know, I had never heard of Kandle until you interviewed her and looked her up afterwards. And I got to say, just from the interview, I was beyond sold by how charming she is.
Yeah.
Like she is she's so funny, so likable. And then you look at the music, you're like, oh yeah, and you're also amazing at that.
Yeah,
so that's great.
So good.
She wants to be on broadcast television or be a podcaster or something, or a host. She has that charisma that definitely can make people like want to hear what she has to say and not just hear what she has to sing.
Yeah, and what I like about Kandle is that she doesn't take herself too seriously, but she always downplays her talent, which I understand. I mean, that's a lot of artists do that, you know. And I don't think she should, because she's so talented, so talented. And like Honey Trap, that song we were talking about, that's on the new album. She was, you know, mentioning maybe she wouldn't be able to play it because it has orchestration in it. I mean, your song has orchestration in it. It has the different time signatures. I mean, she's somebody that I really do. I do believe her time is if it hasn't come, it's going to come. And I'm a firm believer. I just hope she keeps creating music, because I'm always excited when she does.
Yeah.
So, as you know, Ryan, I was a musician formerly. I do it very, very, very lightly these days. But at the height of my band's popularity, and at the height of our success, we did Ozfest in 2000. It was one of the best summers that I've ever spent in my life. And I got to know this young band out of London, Ontario called Kittie. And I've been lifelong friends with Morgan and all the members of Kittie. You know, Fallon, who's I think she's back with the band, or she was back, or she was back for the documentary. But Fallon, Morgan, and of course her sister Mercedes. We've all, you know, I've known them since they were young. They were always like our little sisters. We always watched out for them. We did quite a few tours with them. Probably played in all maybe 60, 70 dates with them. So we got to know them very well. And Morgan is a really, really amazing young lady who has just, you know, she's shown how talented she is in so many aspects. I mean, she's a great singer. She's a great human. She's a great podcaster. And I'm really excited that she took the time to chat with us today, because Kittie was a band that trailblazed for a lot of young girls in metal. There were a lot of girls, you know, that looked up to Kittie and picked up instruments because of Kittie. So the fact that we have her on today's episode is really, really cool. And I'm glad that we both got a chance to chat with her. So here is mine and Ryan's chat with Morgan Lander from the band Kittie. So I've known you for quite a while.
Yeah.
I've known you since 2000. We met in 2000 on Ozfest.
Yes, we did.
And the unique situation about you and I and our respective bands is that we were the only Canadian bands on the bill.
Yeah.
And besides Pitch Shifter, there were no other bands from the British Commonwealth.
Right. This is true, with the Queen on our money and all of that.
But it was a really great experience. Obviously, that summer, and as you know, I mean, that I'm sure it's one of the best summers of your life, and probably it was one of the best summers of my life.
Yeah.
And but I always remember the bond that our bands had, because we really were. I don't know about you, but I felt like we were like kind of fighting against everybody in a way, because we were the only Canadian bands and we got each other.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's something strange about Canadians. I think we just have we have a particular sense of humor. And like I know in the States, everybody there believes that all Canadians know each other and whatnot. So it's like, why not just stick together and prove that? Yeah. Right. But yeah, no, we absolutely did. And I think a lot of the bands that were already sort of part of Ozfest, you know, like they're all, it always just feels like, you know, they're more LA based or they're more New York based or whatever. And coming from Canada, you already feel like you're an outsider. And so it makes sense to just be like, you know, like kind of band together and, you know, say a lot together. And
which is something that we did do. You know, there's not many bands that have done what you guys did, because you came up, and you know, there's been a lot. You were quite young. Let's face it. You were. Yeah, I think you were on Ozfest. You were 15, right?
I was on Ozfest. I turned 18
Okay, you were.
that winter, but Mercedes, my sister and the drummer of Kittie,
Yeah.
was 16. at the
Right.
time.
Okay. So I remember you guys were really young. And I remember what I loved about your band is that people would come and say, "Oh, they're just a bunch of young girls. So what are they going to do?" And you would just get on stage and you would tear people's fucking heads off.
Yeah, we were pissed.
But you also you had lasting power and you had staying power because you guys kept going. I mean, it wasn't, a lot of bands that would do Ozfest, it would be a flash in the pan and it would be a one album cycle, but your band had a career after that.
Well, we kept going, but it certainly wasn't easy. And I felt like, there was a lot of that initial hype from the first album. And, we got a lot of really great tours and we were opening up for bands. But after that, things, after the second album, things didn't really continue to have that kind of momentum. Right. But we're stubborn, of course. And so we kept going. And, the last album I think that we put out was 2011. So it's been a while still, but we continued to tour. We had a few lineup changes, but we continued to tour and put out albums. And I guess I continued to be relevant. And so I guess beyond that initial first album sort of hype, we did have a career. It certainly wasn't easy, but I mean, it's great stories and I can't really complain.
No, and what was great about your band is that when you were hot at the beginning, everybody wanted to take you out. I mean, you guys went out with everybody. Tell people some of the bands, because I know the bands you went out with, but I think people need to know some of the bands you toured with, some of the names.
Well, the very first tour that we did actually before the album even came out was Skin Lab, if anybody remembers that band. They that was our very first real tour. And then right after, I guess during when Spit came out on January 11th, we had just started the Slipknot tour, which was a big scary thing for us. We were like, oh, who are these scary masked men? And we're just kids, I think like I said, I had just turned 18 at that time. My sister was still 15, I think. Yeah. And we did that tour with them, and that was before they were an arena or huge band. So it was at that point where their popularity was just starting to sort of overflow. And the venues that we were playing were
jammed.
Packed. And people hanging from the rafters, and it was crazy. And to be a part of that was a huge deal. And then the next tour that we did was with Seven Dust. And that was also a huge deal. It was amazing. We did the Snowcore tour with you guys,
Fear Factory.
Yeah. And that was, I guess, 2001. Yeah. And then we did the Ozfest. We did a tour with Disturbed in late 2000, I believe, as well. And all along the way, it's we played with Papa Roach, and we played
Pantera.
with Pantera. We played with I think Nickelback.
I mean, you guys were. What's great about your band is that your band could fit anywhere. Because yes, there was the novelty act that obviously every agent wanted to put you on a bill, because I imagine from their marketing point of view, the way they're thinking oh, they're going to bring a different crowd. But what I loved about your band is that no matter when you got on stage or no matter who you played before, you always just slayed, and there was just no question if anybody had any doubts beforehand. And I remember, I'll never forget the first time I saw your band play. I was just floored. I just couldn't. I mean, and then right away we were thick as thieves after that. So let me ask you this. Now, you've got, we're looking at 21 years now, or 22 years from Ozfest. Coming this summer, 22 years.
Yeah.
What is the perspective on that?
Looking back on Ozfest?
Yeah. And just that whole time.
There's a lot of alcohol involved.
This is the thing. So Ryan, okay, and let me I want to let Ryan chime in, because Ryan, I think Ryan and you are similar in age. So Ryan, you were writing that demo. I mean, you have some Kittie stories, right?
Yeah, I was born in '84, and I remember when Kittie came out, it was just there was this thing where it's just still in the late '90s, early 2000s, there's oh wow, a girl band, and that's stupid. It should just be, hey, a great band from Canada, but it is what it is. But I remember I saw that tour with Dope and Slipknot, and just kind of seeing the audience becoming this beast swallowing each other up. But you guys stood your own, and it was It was a great loud concert, one of the loudest concerts I've ever seen. It's I still heard it in the shower days later, just
Yeah. Permanent
ringing.
hearing damage. It's good when you got that
But
ring 20 years later.
Yeah, but it was super cool to see like teenagers get their shit together and actually get on stage, because only an age later did I kind of realize that that's kind of a 1 in a million thing. Like how many 16-year-olds and 18, 17-year-olds were playing Ozfest and opening up for Slipknot in general. Never less a girl band, a ladies band, or bands with ladies, just in fucking general. Who the fuck is 17 and opening up for Slipknot? Like if
It was a mind-blowing experience. And I think that the age thing was sort of like it worked both for and against us in a strange way. Like we were super young and we definitely sort of, we worked hard. I think the songs that we wrote were amazing, but at the same time, people were like, well, can young girls really write songs like that? And so it worked both ways, where people were so intrigued and interested in what we were doing because we were so young. But then at the same time, the other side of that coin was like a lot of people also just didn't believe that it was possible. And I mean, looking back at like the songwriting, like, yeah, that album Spit it's pissed. It's a pissed album, and it is really good. But to me, when I listen to it, I can tell it was written by young people. It's not glossy. And part of what we wanted to do with that album. Well, first of all, we didn't have a lot of time to record things, but we wanted to make sure that it sounded raw. It didn't sound too polished, so that people would believe that we were playing on that album. And even so, people still had a hard time believing it. So it sort of went both ways. But you know what? I credit a lot of things for us, being grounded. And a lot of them were, my parents. They were super encouraging of us. They let us do our thing and let us be bratty and yucky and, crazy and whatnot. But they always just sort of encouraged us to follow our dreams. And, even when you're young and you put your mind to something, you can accomplish amazing things.
Yeah. And this is the thing, Ryan, the Kittie girls had an incredible parental unit that were on the road with them. And that has to be brought up, because your parents were just amazing. And, unfortunately, you lost your dad, and I remember hearing that news, and I was sad for that day, because your dad was amazing. Both your parents and your mom. I still chat with your mom every once in a while on Facebook, and your mom's your biggest fan,
I know she is. And it's crazy, because she was the one that was like, you guys are crazy. Don't do this. You're going to leave school for this.
So what, like I mentioned before, the perspective on it now, when you look at it with different glasses, there is some fondness, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's so interesting to have come, sort of full circle with everything with the band. Looking back at Ozfest, it was an incredible time. There was a lot of alcohol involved, but like, just to even think now back about, wow, we were, on the same bill as all of these bands, lots of people who have, passed on, Static X, Wayne had passed away. Just like knowing that you were a part of something, just in that little snippet of time that was so powerful, and so many people got to see us, and it meant a lot to so many people. And just to even have been a part of that was, and still is, such an amazing thing. But, just in general, like, coming back, full circle to where it seems like people are interested in Kittie again, and, looking back and saying, wow, the things that you guys did and the things that you guys went through, like, they meant something. And, maybe you didn't get the dues that you should have got back then, but it's an interesting thing to be old enough to have things come back around and young people be into nu metal again.
That's what I was just going to say. I see it too. Every once in a while I'll get a message from some kid in Chile, and they'll be like, Slaves on Dope rule. And I'm like, you actually fucking care? Wow. And I was doing, I think I was on Osheaga, or I was on a festival, and I was working, interviewing, and one of the people I was working with for my heart, who was coordinating, we got on the subject of playing and you know, bands and stuff, and she had said, "Oh, I saw that you played with Kittie." I said, "Yeah, I got to play with Kittie," and I remember her face was just like, "You know them?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know Morgan and Mercedes. Like, I've known them forever." She lost her shit, and I remember I reached out to you and I was like, "Morgan, can you do just like a fucking quick little video for her?" And I remember you did that, and her.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that shows to me that obviously, you get the effect that you have on people still. And when you're talking about somebody who might have come up and they were at a certain age where everything's so impressionable, that stays, you know. So if you're a 40-year-old, say you're a 40-year-old man or a 40-year-old woman, and you get in contact with a band that you liked when you were 15, and they send you a message, that's going to mean the fucking world to that person.
Oh yeah,
No
absolutely.
matter where that band is at that point, it's going to mean, you know, it's that it awakens that kid in you. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And the things that you did back then, you know, they helped to shape those people, you know, helped to shape your fans, and they've become the people that they are, you know, in some part because of the music and the things that you helped them through, maybe.
So there's three things I want to ask you about really quickly. One of them is the documentary. The documentary was phenomenal. I love the documentary. I thought I knew a lot about the band, and then I got to learn so much more about the band by watching that. What was it like for you to see that when it was done?
It was a real trip, because you know, it was such a long process. It took a better part of like 4 years, I guess, to like have everything from start to finish, and coordinating everything. But, you know, I really have to hand it to Rob McCallum, the director, who, you know, managed to, I don't know, sort of allow us to shine and tell our story in our own words, you know, and not really like, you know, impose that narrative, you know, of an outsider and whatnot, just sort of let everybody tell it like it is. And everybody's story is going to be different, but to have everybody sort of come back after and celebrate their time in the band, incredible.
Yeah, no, it's it really was something to see, and it was nice to see that the final thing, you know, culminated in a show, and it was just so, and it's kind of breathed a bit of new life into Kittie, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, going through all of the experiences that we did, it was a very cathartic experience in general to, you know, talk with people that you haven't spoken with in years and sort of bury the hatchet in a way. It just sort of allowed us to sort of put all of those things behind us and be able to focus on the fact that, you know, what we did all together was a really, really cool thing. And it sort of allowed, I don't want to say it like, you know, it put, you know, it was a great final touch on the band, because, you know, we are still doing stuff, but it was a sort of a way to sort of like just encapsulate everything. And it was a personal journey as well. You know, we were all, you know, some of us, we didn't have great relationships up until a certain point and whatnot, or hadn't talked in a long time. And so it was just a great way to sort of just feel good about the whole thing, you know? And yeah.
And you also are fronting another band now. Tell me a bit about that, because I got excited about, because they're a band right from my own backyard.
Yeah, from Montreal. So Car Chaos. They've been around for a number of years, and they have a few albums. But the forthcoming album will be my debut.
Right.
And yeah, great friends from Montreal. The drummer Justine used to play in a band from Montreal called Blackguard.
Of course.
So pretty popular, and she's an incredible drummer and a great friend of mine. We toured with Blackguard and Kittie years and years ago, and remained friends ever since. And here we are playing in a band together. So the album is recorded, and we're just sort of slowly crawling out of the pandemic and, you know, what it's done, I guess, to everybody and to bands just in general. You know, so we're slowly putting these things together, but the album is recorded. It's done. I was in Montreal last fall, did the vocals with Christian Donaldson of Cryptopsy. I went up to his studio at his house there, and did the, you know, everything in 7 days, just every day, some days like 10 hours a day, just so really exciting stuff. I'm super stoked. It's very metal. So,
and I want to ask you about the podcast too, because you have a podcast as well.
Yeah.
And you have a podcast that deals with horror movies, which is, you know, obviously a big thing for me.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. You know, huge horror fan here. Grew up in the 80s with the old VHS. So, yeah, I have been doing a podcast called Witch Finger Horror Podcast with two of my friends, Yasmina and Megan. We've been doing it for, I think, since 2016. So we were on the podcast train before the pandemic made everybody on the podcast train.
Podcast train, exactly.
But yeah, it's super low key, super chill, just a group of friends who get together and we drink a lot and we watch these incredibly wretched 80s movies, and we do a little bit of trivia and background stuff about the movie and how it was made. And it's a comedy podcast.
Yeah,
but
it's
the
great.
subject matter's horror. Yeah.
No, but it's really good. I mean, I've listened to it, and what I like is that it's tongue in cheek. You're having a lot of fun, and let's face it. I mean, I'm a lot like you in the sense that I love horror movies. I love bad horror movies.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'm someone that gets excited when Arrow Video decide that they're gonna, drop new stuff, and like,
Oh, yeah.
I need a deluxe version of Tremors. I just do, and like I
Yes.
don't, but I do. so yeah, so I'm just glad to see that you've branched out and you're doing other stuff as well. And that it seems like music's in a good place for you. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like, I feel like maybe once you get to a certain age, it's kind of like, I feel like touring, 9-10 months out of the year, it's a young person's game.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to be able to get to a point where you feel comfortable with picking and choosing how you like to do things, only doing things that really resonate with you, make you feel good about music, and not because you feel like you have to or you're obligated to. It's a really nice place to be in. And so, it's the same thing with like these shows that we have coming up with Kittie.
Right. Yeah.
Being able to pick and choose those, we've got a couple of shows lined up. The first shows that we've done since the reunion stuff in 2017, which is pretty wild. And previous to that, it's been 10 years since our last tour. So it's going to be a big deal. So yeah, we're at Blue Ridge Rock Fest in September, and When We Were Young in October. That's
awesome. Yeah. And it's funny because when I saw that bill, I was like, at first I was like, oh, this is just so not me. It's just a few years past me. And then I saw you were on it. And I was like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, well, we definitely stand out like a sore thumb.
You do. And I think you're going to clean that. I think you're going to clean that place up.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. It's going to be really interesting, kind of thinking about how, you were saying before how you
could play with anybody.
We never really like fit in. And so that kind of makes us fit in everywhere in a strange way.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll definitely stick out, and we plan to play the heaviest set. So we will cause a scene, I'm sure. And it's just nice to be, to feel wanted, to have people be excited about these shows, and we'll be in great company.
I definitely want to ask you, just like, once again, just so impressed that you all had your shit together so well at the age you were, because I know when I was 16, 17, I was just a fucking idiot. That if
we were fucking idiots too.
No, but if he was lucky enough, would coordinate himself to get to a show to enjoy it, nevertheless be able to play these shows in these places. And I've played with some bands that are cool bands, but it's when they had their best days behind them. But you were in the mecca of it when everything was blowing up and everything was happening, and that's just wonderful. But I got to say, in a world of many people I know that just whenever they had an opportunity, just kind of squandered it, just did it too much. You're a band after all these years, and you're a well-adjusted individual and clearly appreciated everything and can remember everything that happened. Did anybody ever give you some really great advice when you were young to allow you to be the person you are in front of us today? Because frankly, we all didn't make it. And a lot of people squandered their opportunities before they even possibly could manifest.
Yeah, well, don't take drugs, kids. They're bad. I mean, honestly, it's interesting because I think, again, being young, it had so many advantages and also disadvantages. Being so young, being thrust into this music industry with, mostly, especially metal, mostly men, like twice our age. It seemed a little daunting. And so, we got along great with people, and we were assholes too. We acted our age for sure, but there was always something that kind of made us be like, like party, you know, in the way that they might have been partying. You know what I mean? And also because we were so young at the time, my parents actually by law had to be out on tour with us. And not that they ever were like shitting on our good time, because my sister puked on her shoes drinking with the guys in Pantera for sure, many, many times. But, you know, there were limits. And I think we knew them. And again, going back to talking about my parents, you know, just in general, instilling great values in us, you know, even well before the band, you know, and those types of things sort of took over. It was like, I just think that they really helped to shape my sister and I into like sort of normal people. And yeah, like a lot of fucked up shit happened, and you know, we do have a lot of trauma and a lot of baggage, but you know, you kind of have to work through these things. And we definitely, you know, I guess we turned out all right. And I do owe a lot of it to my parents and their wisdom and their guidance. And yeah.
Awesome.
Does this bring back a memory? These?
Yeah, is that the one?
Yeah. So these are
Oh man,
these are the ones that Pantera. So whenever Dimebag would hang out, he would have these around and he would give shots to people in them. And I remember he gave me one of these with a shot of alcohol in it. And he's like, "Do a shot with Dime." And I was like, "I don't drink. Like, I'm sober."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Do a fucking shot." And I'm like, "I'm not gonna do a fucking shot." So I remember he just took it, shot it, and didn't keep the cup. So I still that's why when you're talking about doing, because I remember these, like, and it was like one of those things like, I'm glad I have that. But hey, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. It's International Women's Day, and we really wanted to shine the light on some incredible women that work in metal, in music in general. And you know, I'm really glad that you agreed to come on, because I personally have been obviously a friend, but a fan for a long, long time. And I've always respected you immensely, both you and your sister, because you got through it and you came out, like Ryan was saying, you came out two great individuals that are killing it, you know? So it's nice.
Thank you so much.
It's nice. And it's nice to watch from the sidelines, you doing the podcast, the new band, and Kittie coming back. And it just, I think if your dad is looking down, he's pretty fucking proud. I would tell you that.
I think so too. You know, and I often think about that, and I know that he's proud.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling. You know, it's all you can do. Just continue to do what you think you'd do, and that's it.
Sweet. Thanks again.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
You were saying before that, you know, you, Kevin, and the boys saw them as little sisters.
Yeah.
I was 15 when they came out, so I didn't. And more saw them as you know, the awestruck, beautiful goddesses that could play way better than I could. So
right. Yeah,
you know, we had a different experience with our first perceptions of this band. But I had mentioned that I was at that Slipknot show that they were opening at. But what I didn't mention in the interview is that I was also backstage, and it's just funny because Slipknot scared the crap out of me too. But I was much more scared to say hello to, you know, the awesome, pretty talented ladies in the corner as any 8th grade dance would depict. You know? Yeah,
I get it. You definitely different perspectives. And you know what they had to go through and endure was probably what made them, you know, the strong women that they are today. But again, you know, I can't stress enough how amazing their parents were. Both her mom and dad were on the road, got to know them really, really well. And they were just phenomenal people. And when her dad passed away, it was something that a lot of us really, really were very, very sad about, because, you know, Dave Lander was just a wonderful human, really, really nice man. And just the nicest smile, and just, you know, he was just happy for the girls, but always watched out for them, but let them have, you know, he gave them just enough rope. And it was great. It was really, really nice to see. And it was nice to see they ended up being as awesome as they are. And
so nice. I was so floored by how humble she was and how nice she was. But Jason, I gotta say, as we reflect on the rest of the show right now, it seems like every person you interviewed today just had to overcome something. Like the first was just like the first interview, the theme is kind of like, we had this band, I did it with my best friend, but I needed to get a real job and had
Yeah.
to step away from it, but
Yeah.
then got back into it. The second one is overcoming something terrible, but then using art to kind of not live with it, but just kind of like take it back.
Mhm.
And the third interview, like with Kandle, it's just like, here's a record label screwing you, silencing you, making sure that you can't even put out anything.
Yeah.
So you think you make it, but then you give your voice away, essentially.
Yeah.
And then the last one was like Morgan and her sisters inability to quit, despite the fact that everybody when band members would leave, they would still go on.
Yeah.
They kept the band together. The Expression kept the band together.
Yeah.
All these stories that was editing, I'm just like, wow, no one had an easy ride.
No,
None of them.
And let's be honest. I mean, that is something that goes across the board for musicians. It's a tough road, but there's an extra layer of it for women. And anyone that thinks differently is an idiot. And I can tell you, I've seen it. And being someone who's on the other end of things now, and I'm able to help out artists, being in the position that I'm in with music, with radio and stuff. I want to help out as many young artists as I can. And I think it's important for men to realize that, a lot of the times there's men who want to know, how do I be an ally? How can I help? Help by educating other men. Help by bringing up, strong sons who will treat women right and who won't look at them as objects and treat them as equal. So those are the little things I think that guys can do. Because I know it is a confusing conversation a lot for men, that they don't know what to do. And I'm not saying every guy is a creep, I don't believe that at all, but I do believe that it starts from, the parents, and it really, really starts from someone being a good example. So this is a last minute edition, and I'm really excited that we ended up getting this very, very last minute, but it was so worth it. Ryan, Taylor Momsen from The Pretty Reckless right now. I've been working at Shome in Montreal for about 12 years. We've been supporting you guys since day one. And this record, it seems like we were getting single after single. And the last time you and I chatted on the phone, you were locked up at home and you weren't going anywhere.
Yep.
Has that changed for you now? Are you, because I remember you were one of the artists that I spoke to that wasn't that much in a rush to get back to things. And in the sense that you were like already a little bit apprehensive about being out in front of people and stuff.
Yeah, no, I think my apprehension remains, but the desperate need to play live music again has overtaken the
supersedes it.
Yeah. Supersedes it. So no, we're very excited. We're starting tour in the beginning of April now, and coming to Canada in mid-August and stuff. So everything's starting to get announced. Everything's getting booked and tightened up, and it's just we're so happy to be going out again. Like, it's been too long.
Yeah,
I feel depleted and deprived of it, and just even thinking about it and getting into rehearsals. I just came back to New York City. Just being around people, like just walking down the street, it feels very invigorating.
So now you're back to the Purell.
Yeah, back to the Purell. I'm still gonna keep the mask, but just be safe, because no one wants to get sick. I don't want to forget even COVID for a minute. Like, I just don't want to get any kind of sick. It sucks to be sick on tour. So I'm extra careful anyway. But no, we're just so excited to be able to go play music again and see the fans and see people and do this kind of thing in person. And it's going to be great.
Yeah. The collaborations on this record, I mean, let alone, I mean, look, the songs on this record are great. Okay. You guys there's just something, you guys have been able to dial into the sweet spot in rock and roll that there's not many bands that are able to do it consistently. And you guys it just seems like every time you're releasing something, it's like, all right, they've got the formula. They unlock the code. And, but let alone the good songs, you have some monster collaborations. Having two of the dudes from Soundgarden on a song is pretty, I mean, you're pretty hard pressed to get a better stamp of approval than that. How, for you personally, getting those guys involved on the track, was that a win for you personally? Were you a big Soundgarden fan before that?
I mean, I've been even a big Soundgarden fan's an understatement. Like,
okay, right, yeah.
Soundgarden, the Beatles and Soundgarden are my two favorite bands.
Okay, so it was a huge one for you then.
It was a huge one, and it's starting way back. Like the Pretty Reckless formed over the love of the Beatles and Soundgarden. Like they were two bands were a very integral part of the Pretty Reckless existing and the band and all of us meeting and getting along and finding that kind of musical bond. And so, you know, obviously getting to open for them was just a dream come true and a highlight of my life, all of our lives. And then that obviously ended very tragically. And to, you know, I don't want to get into all that, but then having it kind of come into, you know, after all this tragedy and stuff that we'd all been through separately and together, kind of coming together and creating something new was just this very, at least for me, I never want to speak for them, but for me, it was this very kind of full circle, beautiful moment that, you know, it just really kind of shows the power of music and how healing it can be and how cathartic and you know, and then just ultimately fun at the end of the day too. Like, so it was just a really just incredible experience that I'm so thankful that they were a part of it, that they agreed to play on that song. And yeah, just a highlight in my musical career for sure. Like,
yeah, there's something about that band when they would play live. I mean, I got to see them in 1992 at Lollapalooza. And it was the year they were, you know, it was them, Pearl Jam. They were doing Temple of the Dog stuff together. It was mind blowing. So when I saw that and that came on the playlist at the station, I was really, really excited for you because that's a big one. And then getting Tom, you know, Tom's another guy who's he's right up there on the Pillars of Rock. When you're collaborating with these guys, are you actually writing back and forth with them, or is it like, here's the song, what do you want to add to it? How was the process for both of those songs?
Slightly different, but kind of the same. I write everything first, like, and I never really write anything with the intention of approaching someone. Like I didn't write, and so it went thinking I'm going to write this, and I'm going to ask Tom to play on it. Like I'm not writing that for him. I wrote the song, and then when the song was finished, it was kind of, you step back from it and go, is there anyone outside of my core unit, you know, in this band that could contribute something to the song to really take it to its full potential? If the answer is yes, and there is someone, then you approach them and see what happens. And so that's kind of what happened with, and so it went with Tom, where I had finished the song, and it was just very, I don't know, due to the topic of the song and the overall kind of energy, it just, his style of guitar playing I thought would fit really well. I sent it to him, said, hey, would you want to play on this? And he thankfully said yes. And we actually did that separately, like we recorded separately, and he sent his tracks back to me. But with Soundgarden was a little, with Kim and Matt, it was a little more involved. I finished the song, I demoed it acoustically. Or was it fully acoustic? It might have been some electric guitars, but a very stripped back version of the song, but in complete form. And I left a very kind of long section for Kim to kind of do his thing. I was like, I just want you to, you know, free form be you. And so I sent both of them the demo I had made and asked if they'd want to play on it. And they thankfully said yes. And so that became a very collaborative process where we actually flew to Seattle and did it in person together at London Bridge Studios, which is, you know, where Soundgarden made Louder Than Love and Pearl Jam made Pen, and, you know, the list of records is incredible. And that was just, it had to be one of the coolest experiences of my life. I mean, getting to see that song come to life in real time. Was crazy. It was so cool. Cause you know, you always can imagine, like I can hear in my head where it should go, where I think it's going to go, and, you know, how their voices are going to contribute to what I've already, you know, laid down, and they just superseded my expectations. Like, it's just, that being the first time Matt hit his snare, the insanity of that power thing on commanding authority that he has. Like, head goes back, and then as soon as Kim, you know, first note Kim hits, it's just your head's blown back, and it's like, well, I guess we don't have to do that again. We got it, guys. So it was just a very fun process and a very just amazing time, amazing experience. And anytime I get to work with them or hang out with them, and it feels lucky, because they're just great. They're great people.
They seem it. They really, really seem it. And they seem like the kind of people that wouldn't get involved, wouldn't even step into the room unless they really want to be there.
I don't think they would, which you know, makes me feel great.
Of course, it speaks volumes about your songwriting. So there's been a bit of a time that, you know, the albums come out. There's been a bit of a space for, you know, possibly continuing to write to get ahead of the curve as touring starts to open up. Did you use any of that time for that? Like, are you a bit of ahead with stuff or no?
Yes and no. Yes, in the way that I'm always writing, it's just a part of the way my brain works. So that's something I never really shut off. So there's a lot of new material, but you don't really know what new material, where that's going to go until you actually really delve into it. And that side of things I haven't done quite yet, because it's a very different mindset than touring. They're kind of two different things. One's very internal and one's very external. So I'm preparing to get into the external mode for a little bit here. I've been in the internal side of things for way too long now. So I need a little bit of outside of my own head life for a bit. And then we'll be back in the studio working on record number 5.
And when this band tours, you tour for a while. I mean, you go out, you work the record. So
because of the world situation, I think it's shorter stints, but over a long period of time. So we're going out starting April, and we're out for a good chunk of time. I don't even know. I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 7, a while. Check the website for dates.
And lastly, it's International Women's Day. We've spoken to 4 other really awesome women from different bands, different styles of music today. And I've asked all of them the same question. What advice would you give an up and coming female artist in music?
That's a good question. I don't know that I would give different advice to a female artist than I would any artist. I think to a young artist, I think the first thing I would say to anyone is just make sure you're doing it for the love of it. And there's no outside influence that it's very easy to get swayed in different directions or be pushed into, a category or to this side or to this side. Like, having a strong identity and knowing who you are and what you want to do as an artist is kind of invaluable. And that's not to say that you have to know exactly, like, you can always, you're always evolving and growing, but knowing who you are and sticking to those guns and doing it simply for the love of music and not for any sort of outside thing, like, fame or whatever it is. Those things are irrelevant. As long as you're coming from that right place, you're going to have a great time, because then that's how I look at it. Like, if you're doing it for yourself, you do it for yourself because you really love it, then you're never disappointed, because one person can show up to the show, no one can show up to the show, but you still have a good time. You can still get to play songs and play music for a living. And that's incredible. And so if you can find happiness in just that, then anything else is just extra.
Almost every successful artist I've spoken to will tell me the same thing, that their best memories of touring weren't the massive tours. It was the first time they got in that van and they played, and it was the small victories, showing up, finding a floor to sleep on, getting food from the venue. All those little things those are the memories that stay with you more than, the massive tour with Metallica.
100%. I mean, I'm sure a massive tour with Metallica you too, but you need it. But it's the collective memories that define who you are and stuff. So I think that my advice to women or men getting into the industry is just make sure you're doing it for you. It sounds so simple, but it's really easy to get lost in the crazy industry, and to just always stay true to you. And then you'll always be successful.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Continued success. You're a monster vocalist, and I can't wait to see where this continues to, because it's been a really fun ride to watch from the sidelines. I got to tell you.
Thank you. It's been a fun one to live as well. So I'm with you. I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Next stop, live shows. That's where it's going.
Yes. And I hope that you get through the anxiousness about it. Because I know when we spoke last time, you're like, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to touch anybody.
No, I think my fears have definitely calmed down compared to last time. I've figured out how to mentally manage it. So I think we'll be good.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Dude, that's so amazing. I'm so glad she did this. And keeping up with the theme of the show that was unintentional, about how none of these artists had an easy ride. You think about someone achieving fame at a young age, and you'd think that they'd put their hat up and not really be able to do anything else because they made their mark on the world and kind of, spend the rest of their lives just capitalizing on that one thing they did as a child. it's amazing that I heard of this Pretty Reckless band and then was told that that's the little girl from The Grinch, because it's such a good fucking band.
Yeah. So thank you for everybody that participated in today's International Women's Day episode. A big thanks to our sponsor, Studio House Designs, always keeping us looking fresh and comfortable. And we want to let you know that our title sponsor for the Rockman Power Hour is coming on officially as of next week. It's going to be this great company out of Thunder Bay, Ontario, called Heartbeat Hot Sauce. We're going to tell you more about them next week, but they make the best hot sauce in the world, and we're going to be getting all up in that next week as we bring them on as our title sponsor for the Rockman Power Hour. So we're looking forward to that. We'd also like to thank my co-host Ryan Stick for always being there and being the best guy around. Our producer Julia Kajerski, and a special thanks to my friend Sarah Lutz over at Looters for helping us put all of this together. And of course, thanks to Mares of Thrace, thanks to Gold, thanks to Kittie, thanks to Kandle, and of course, thanks to Taylor Momsen from The Pretty Reckless. And we will see you next week on the Rockman Power Hour.
Can I say thanks to my mom?
Sure, if you want to.
I would just like to give a big thanks and birthday shout out to my mom, who's like the strongest human I've ever met.
Your mom's pretty awesome.
Despite whatever the hell was going wrong with me and my body and breaking my face and getting really sick, like there was always somebody by my bedside day and night, and it takes a strong person to not completely break down when you see, someone else going through hell. And she gave me a sense of normalcy that everything was going to be okay, because she wasn't allowing what was happening to me destroy her. So, big thank you, Mom. I think I'm here today because of you, not just because you birthed me, but because you saved me afterwards.
Big ups to Ruth.